for example, and there was an article, I don't remember if it was Inside Higher Ed or Chronicle, comparing the changes in education to the changes in the health system, which tended to be, I think, about 2 decades ahead of us. And they saw specialization there, right? So what once one doctor did, now he has a whole team, or she has a whole team. There are nurses, and it's diversified, right? Division of labor. The difference is they've unionized, and the benefits that come with being a nurse are not there if you're an adjunct. And this is something that has really frustrated me as a graduate student, is that there are big hurdles to us mobilizing while we're here as students. And this is something we saw with the recent restructuring. I was part of a group of students trying to mobilize to say, administration, you have to listen to us. You are leaving behind your current students. You're sacrificing them to make it better for those coming in after.
But what incentive do they have? There's no market incentive for a university
I'm just saying that
to not hire adjuncts. I mean, there's not like a giant pot of money out there that's not going to be spent.
I mean, that's the logic that the Board of Visitors use, and that's what people freaked out about. I mean, this isn't just a market, this isn't just a business, it's also a university. I mean, there's other incentives other than market incentives that drive what we do every day.
And I guess part of what I'm saying is, in the humanities, we need to be able to understand their language better, and they ours, to foster some sort of dialogue between that side and this side.
That's
and maybe
true.
not
But
having two
if
sides.
we could like unionize or even just mobilize the students collectively, I think that would mitigate some of the situation. We're not saying there shouldn't be adjuncts, or that maybe there shouldn't be teaching positions which are not tenured faculty, but healthcare would be nice, or you know, a reasonable amount of work, or thinking that it might actually lead into a general faculty or tenured faculty position would be good too.
Yeah, I mean, I think that it takes a lot of, there's a live stream of me talking a lot of shit about the University of Virginia, like all over YouTube. I mean, I wake up sometimes at night with fear that like some job search is going to Google my name and say like that crazy radical is not coming here under any circumstances. It's scary, but I think that it becomes less scary the more you hear stories, I think, from people who have been in really desperate circumstances, and the more that you get. I mean, I do think that you have to move to that point where you say like, if I take this adjunct job, then I know that I'm ultimately making it worse for someone else. And I actually think that we need to stop. I mean, like, I think that at some point you say, like, I'm sorry, the market logic doesn't fit with what we're trying to do. I just have to say at some point, like, if we're going to be talking about the bottom line, then teaching is going to be, like, as cheap as it can be. Librarians are never going to have any job security. We're going to be increasingly outsourcing labor to the point that people are going to be paid as little as possible because you're going to turn them into part-time labor. You know, people are going to have all these, and at some point you have to say, like, forget it. We're not playing the market game anymore. We've got a lot of resources too. Maybe you guys need to move a little closer to our side.
Isn't one solution to shrink the pool of job applicants then?
That's what's happened, yeah.
Yeah.
Which, and
That's the restructuring.
why shouldn't it? Right?
Nope. Did anyone say that it shouldn't?
No, I'm not saying. I'm saying that's. Is there?
I think the concern is the people who are being left behind, that now that that logic has been in place, the shrinking and the fully funding and all those very good things, is that there's a whole population of people who are being sort of left behind, for lack of a better word. So I mean, eventually this problem will go away, right? But it's going to go away with a lot of people being screwed over in the process.
But
I think
also,
also
it's on their initiative to go out and do.
But wait, if I could say something from what I think is a rather perverse perspective of faculty. There's a perverse incentive for faculty to admit students that they know very well are most likely not going to get jobs. And it's not just for labor, it's for their own self-esteem. To say, I have graduate students, I teach graduate seminars, and I replicate myself. And I think that's one thing that we also need to address. It's not just a labor market problem, it's the replication of oneself, which is research university is very much predicated on that replication. And there's a very perverse incentive that we oftentimes don't address. Grace?
So I think that these are wonderful points, and I agree with a lot of them, but I think it's curious that on a seminar on the future of graduate studies, that all of our emotion seems to be going toward the issue of getting a job, when there are all these other questions, including what are we trying to accomplish as a grad student? What are we trying to teach and to learn to teach when we go out in the world? And that seems to be getting, to me, sucked under in this crisis of the graduate student. There's less and less attention opportunity on what do we need to know and what do we want to pass on. And that seems to kind of get lost in this mix about the fact that there is a very real, very pressing crisis. So I don't know if you have any thoughts on that, but I was just really struck by the fact that there is very little conversation about how is knowledge itself changing and what does that have to bear when we talk about interdisciplinary studies and we talk about conversations between departments in a very large context. How does the graduate students tap into that? And are we forgetting to teach our students that? So.
The graduate students actually lead that. It's graduate students who come up with the next great ideas. If a responsible faculty in general and a responsible faculty member puts his or her younger colleagues or newer colleagues, which I don't know the right adjective, but even hesitate to call them students, in the right rooms at the right time with the right people, given the right tools and the right background, the right guidance, and you let them loose, and you let those world-shaping and shaking ideas come from the freshest minds, and that's the real reason to have graduate students. That's the real reason to work with graduate students. I mean, there are plenty of people who want to have graduate students for their own ego, and plenty of people who want to have graduate students around them so they get to teach classes of 5 people, classes for which they don't have to prepare because they assign books that they read 20 years ago and make the graduate students do all the time teaching. While that exists, the fact is the reason to have graduate students is to be smarter. And the reason I want graduate students is so that they can help me be smarter. They can teach me some stuff. They can ask questions that I can't yet imagine, and they can bring in perspectives and experiences and pieces of literature that I could not have discovered without them. It is about expanding the pool of exciting minds in your immediate reach, and doing so in a way that you could take great personal satisfaction out of as a faculty member, seeing that person take flight intellectually and then hopefully career-wise as well. But if the intellectual doesn't lead, the career flounders.
So I just want to underscore that and say that it's also not, in my experience, not hard at all to inscribe that kind of focus on graduate students onto the structures of the university and onto the structures of our professional association. So I'm the president of the Association for Computers and Humanities, and for many years now we have geared all of our programs around mentoring and supporting the next generation of sort of emerging digital scholars. When the Scholars Lab was created, we decided that this place was not going to do what digital humanities centers at UVA, and we have a long history at digital humanities centers at UVA, had always done before, which is focus on faculty projects, that instead we were going to let graduate students sort of lead the way, let them formulate intellectual questions, let their research pull faculty in cases where we have partnered closely with faculty, and Jenny's sitting in the front row, she knows this, the graduate students who have been part of that team have really shaped, formed the projects. They've taken them on as their own. They very quickly sort of leave the hands of the faculty and become the sort of career shaping next thing for the students. But really, when I say, to inscribe it on the structures of the university, basically, I came in and I said, graduate students, that's going to be our focus, and hiring has, sort of been shaped around that. The people that we've brought into the Scholars Lab, we've chosen them for their ability to intersect with the graduate students. Funding streams, technology that we support, develop, bring into this space. Graduate students have shaped that, and that in turn shapes faculty research, and that in turn shapes disciplines. And so it's just not hard. It's just a matter of deciding that that's going to be your focus, because it's the forward-looking and the right thing to do.
Last question.
Well, I just wanted to say that I think that these two questions, in a way, go together very well, because graduate students not only are the nexus of a lot of new ideas and connections interactions with both undergraduates and faculty and administration at the university. But we're also a kind of interesting connector between, let's say, the wider society and the world of the university. We're coming into programs with these ideas that we presumably have gotten because we live in a society where, for whatever reason, that idea seems interesting. And we're not ensconced yet in a university the way that a faculty member is. So it, of course, takes a lot of work and a lot of thinking and a lot of activism as well, but I think that there's a way to try to connect this question of sort of what are our ideas and what are we bringing intellectually to the university and to the world with this question of why ought, because it ought, our expertise and our ideas to be valued on the outside, and how can we advocate for that both within and outside of the university.
Usually at the end of events you have to mention that there's a reception, but you're going to collide with the reception whether you like it or not. But in the meantime, we thank the panel who gave so much.
I did,
They've merchandised themselves, their own branding, selling all sorts of swag. Oh, it's all study abroad. It's
I love your laugh so much. Your laugh gives me so much
We TA for the same class, and we sit in front of the next wall, and I sit in the back, and every time like a professor makes a joke, I look at the person next to me and I really laugh. So I'm like,